I texted in the family group chat. "Flight lands at 3 p.m. Can someone pick me up?" My brother replied. I didn't pack heavy, just a small carry-on, a folded flag, and a silence that seemed to weigh more than any suitcase ever could. My flight home was half empty, the kind where the hum of the engines feels louder than the passengers. I had just left behind a cemetery halfway across the world. Military burial. 21 guns splitting the air, the kind of honor you never want to earn. My husband's name carved into stone before he ever turned 40. We'd been married for years, though deployments had stolen most of that time. Love in uniform means anniversaries marked by emails, birthdays celebrated through video calls, and a constant undercurrent of waiting. But I never kept score. I never asked for much, just a ride home when it was all over. Right after takeoff, I sent one message to the family group chat. No dramatic punctuation, no flood of crying emojis. Just flight lands at 3:00 p.m. Can someone pick me up? The reply came before the seatbelt sign turned off. My brother. We're busy. Try Uber. 2 minutes later, my mother. Why didn't you plan better? No. How was the funeral? No. We're so sorry. No. We're proud of him. Just a clean, cold dismissal. I pressed my forehead to the window, watching the clouds slide past. That silence in my chest, it wasn't grief. Not entirely. It was the realization that sometimes family doesn't hold you. Sometimes they hold the knife. I didn't argue, didn't explain, just typed back, "No worries," and that was it. But here's the thing they didn't know: as the plane cut through the sky, I wasn't coming home alone. And when the cameras caught what happened next, when the evening news rolled the footage, they'd realize that the story wasn't about who wasn't there. It was about who showed up anyway. Before the folded flag, before the 21 guns, before the headlines, there was just Liam and me, two people who met in a coffee shop on a rainy Thursday. He was in uniform, even then fresh from base, smelling faintly of jet fuel and rain. He had that quiet kind of confidence, the kind you don't notice right away, but it stays with you long after the conversation ends. We didn't fall in love all at once. It was a slow build: letters tucked into coat pockets, phone calls from time zones away, care packages with his favorite coffee, and my bad handwriting on every label. We built our life between deployments, piecing together months like a patchwork quilt, each square stitched with hellos and goodbyes. Military marriage isn't glamorous. People imagine reunions at airports and kisses in slow motion. What they don't see are the birthdays missed, the leaky faucet you fix alone, the Christmas dinner for one. I learned to sleep on my side of the bed without thinking about it, to plan holidays that might be canceled with a single phone call. But for us, that was normal. We didn't dwell on the absences. We counted the returns. Liam was the kind of man who could make an entire room quieter just by walking in. Not because he demanded attention, but because he carried himself like he already knew what mattered and what didn't. He'd tell me stories about his unit, not the missions, never the classified details, but about the people. The woman who could take apart and reassemble a rifle blindfolded. The guy who made the best pancakes in the barracks. The way they looked out for each other when no one else would. We had plans for after the next deployment, after the paperwork, after one more tour. He wanted a house near the coast, a dog, maybe kids. I wanted all of it, too. We talked about it like it was inevitable, like time owed us those years we'd spent apart, but time doesn't owe you anything. The call came on a Tuesday. They said it fast, like pulling off a bandage. Words like incident overseas, immediate family notification. My knees didn't buckle the way I'd seen in movies. I just stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, staring at the corner of the room, as if the right words might be hiding there. That was the last time I heard his voice on a recording they gave me later. He said, "If something ever happens to me, don't let silence win." And I hadn't. Not then. Not ever. By the time the wheels touched down, the cabin lights dimmed and the seatbelt sign chimed. I'd already decided not to expect anyone waiting for me. Still, hope has a way of lingering, stubborn and quiet, like the last ember in a dying fire. Maybe they'd change their minds. Maybe someone would surprise me at the gate. But when I stepped into the terminal, all I saw were other people's reunions. Husbands lifting wives off the ground, parents squeezing their kids so tight their faces vanished into jackets, friends holding signs with glitter and crooked letters. I kept walking my hand tight around the folded flag in my bag, each step pulling me further from any illusion that this would be different. I didn't stop at baggage claim. I didn't wait for a text that wasn't coming. Outside, the cold air hit me like it had been waiting. I stood at the curb, scanning the line of cars until a black SUV pulled up, its windows dark, its engine low and steady. When the rear door opened, I wasn't met with silence. I was met with precision. 3 Marines stepped out, 2 women, 1 man, all in full-dress blues. Their shoes shined like mirrors, their posture sharp enough to cut through the wind. They didn't say my name. They didn't have to. The man took my bag. 1 woman stepped behind me, the other to my left. Without a word, they became a wall at my back, their presence so solid it felt like armor. For the first time in days, I didn't feel exposed. As we moved toward the vehicle, I noticed a camera crew across the street. Local news, probably covering an unrelated story until they saw us. The lens turned, the camera followed. I didn't flinch. Let them see. Let them capture what it looks like when strangers honor you more than blood. In the SUV, the driver passed back a small white box tied with a ribbon. From the unit, he said. Inside was a medal one Liam had earned but never received in person. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. Not here. Somewhere between the airport and my street, I realized this wasn't just an escort, it was a statement. One my family hadn't expected me to make, one they would see before I ever spoke a word to them again. And when the evening news aired, they'd understand I didn't come home alone. I came home carrying the weight of someone who had always shown up and the proof that silence wasn't going to win. The news clip ran less than a minute, but it was enough. Evening broadcast. Middle of the program, right after the weather, right before sports. The anchor's voice was calm, the kind of calm trained to deliver everything from stock market updates to breaking tragedies without a tremor. Today, a widow returned home from her husband's overseas military burial alone, but not unnoticed. Then came the footage. The black SUV pulling to the curb. Me stepping out still in black, the folded flag held firmly to my chest. Behind me, 3 Marines in full dress flanking me like shields. The camera caught the way they didn't just escort me, they stood with me. Their eyes forward, shoulders squared, silent but unyielding. The anchor went on. In an unexpected tribute, her late husband's former unit arranged a military-led escort to honor her return. She declined interviews but left behind one handwritten note for the press. My handwriting filled the screen. If you ever find yourself standing alone at the edge of grief, don't look for the people who left you there. Look for the ones who show up anyway. Signed only with my initials. They didn't need my full name. Everyone who mattered already knew. Within minutes, my phone lit up notifications, missed calls, message previews. Not from my family. From strangers, from veterans, from people I'd never met, but who understood exactly what that note meant. The family group chat, however, stayed silent. No reactions, no apologies. Just an empty thread, its last message still mine. No worries. It didn't stay quiet for long outside of that chat. By morning, the clip had been shared across social media. Comments piled up, each one more pointed than the last. That's loyalty. This is what family looks like. Imagine leaving your own at the airport. The public didn't know the names, but the people in my group chat did, and so did their friends. My mother made the first move. She posted an old photo, me and my brother as kids at a 4th of July parade. Caption family, above all, always. The top reply wasn't from me. It was from a woman she barely knew. You didn't even pick her up from the airport. The comment was shared, screenshotted, repeated. Not by me, by others who still believed loyalty wasn't optional. My brother followed. One text, didn't realize it was that serious. You should have said something. I read it twice. Laughed once, as if grief required a formal invitation, as if burying my husband overseas was something I could have packaged better. I typed a reply, deleted it, tried again, deleted that too. Then finally sent, "You made your choice." No exclamation points, no explanation. Just a mirror held up to the moment they'd abandoned me, and the mirror was about to get bigger. Because the news station had called again this time, they didn't just want the image. They wanted the voice behind it, mine. I hadn't planned to speak. The image had been enough, a silent statement caught in a single frame. But silence can protect the wrong people, and I'd learned the hard way that some truths need to be said out loud. When the station called, the producer's voice was gentle, almost hesitant. "We'd like to give you a chance to tell your side. No edits, no spin." I agreed. Not for sympathy, not for views, for clarity, for record. The studio was quiet when I arrived. No flashy lights, no audience, just a single camera, a table, and the anchor across from me, his hands folded, his expression steady. He didn't waste time. "What happened when you landed?" I took a breath, my fingers lacing together in my lap. I buried my husband with honor and came home to silence. The room stilled. Even the cameraman stopped adjusting his lens. I told them about the group chat, the replies that came colder than the wind outside that terminal. How no one came but 3 people in uniform, people who hadn't shared my blood, showed up without being asked. How they stood behind me like they were guarding something worth protecting. I didn't name names. I didn't drag anyone into the open. But I did say this: blood doesn't make someone family. Presence does. The segment aired that night, 6 unbroken minutes. No music, no montage, just my voice. The response was immediate. Emails from strangers, letters from widows, messages from people who had also returned home to empty curbs and quiet houses. They said the same 2 words again and again, "Me too." But not everyone was quiet. My mother left the group chat. My brother renamed it from family to just group. I archived it without a word. Once you've been left behind in your worst moment, you stop asking people to be what they should have already been. This wasn't revenge. It was truth, and the truth had taken on a life of its own. Veteran groups started sharing the clip. A Gold Star mother reposted it with the caption, "This is what dignity looks like." Even local radio stations played audio from the segment during morning shows. I'd spoken once, but the echo was still moving, and with every share, every stranger who reached out, I realized something. This story was no longer about me. It was about anyone who'd ever stood alone waiting for a ride that never came and decided not to wait again. It started quietly, a single letter in my mailbox with no return address. Inside, written in careful script, "I saw you on the news. My husband never made it back. You made me feel less alone." Then it grew. Local veteran groups reached out. A military spouses network offered flowers and meals I hadn't asked for, but suddenly realized I needed. A Gold Star parents organization invited me to their monthly vigil. I went standing at the edge with my hood up, unsure if I belonged until I saw their faces. People who understood the weight of a folded flag without needing it explained. And somewhere in that candlelit crowd, I spotted him, my brother, standing at the perimeter, hands buried in his pockets, eyes fixed on the ceremony. He didn't speak to me, didn't come closer. But he saw it all, how strangers showed up when family didn't, how a community carried what blood refused to touch. The next morning, he sent a text. "Didn't think it would get this big." I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back, "That's the thing about grief. It either builds walls or it builds bridges. You picked your side." No reply. But by then, I wasn't looking for one. In the weeks that followed, the flowers didn't stop. Neither did the letters. And with each one, I felt the same shift. I didn't want to be just a headline people passed around. I wanted to build something that would outlast the story. That's how the Welcome Project began, a volunteer network for military spouses returning home alone, airport pickups, meal trains, care teams. Not charity, not pity, just presence, the kind that shows up. Within 3 days, volunteers from 5 states signed up. A woman donated a van, another offered her event space. The first pickup was at JFK, a young widow greeted by a small crowd holding a sign that read, "We've got you." The photo went viral. That's when my mother called. I let it ring. She left a voicemail I never returned. Some wounds close not because someone apologizes, but because you stop bleeding for those who kept watching you drown. The Welcome Project kept growing. And somewhere in the noise of all that movement, I found peace, not in reconciliation, but in replacement. I had stopped waiting at the curb. I was the one pulling up. People ask me sometimes what started it all, the welcome project, the vans, the signs at the gate. I tell them it began with a flight that landed at 3:00 p.m. and nobody came. It's not a sad story anymore. It's a story about choice. About how in the middle of grief you can either keep staring at the door that stayed closed or start building a new one somewhere else. I used to think closure meant an apology, a phone call, a moment where the people who hurt you finally say the words they should have said when it mattered. But closure came quietly in my kitchen, folding a Welcome Project t-shirt into a care kit for a widow I'd never met. That night I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for texts, not for calls, not for the kind of family you're supposed to have, but don't. I was already surrounded by one, the kind built from presence, not blood. So here's what I'll tell the next person who asks how to survive the loneliness. You don't rebuild by waiting for them. You rebuild by becoming what they weren't. You show up, for others, for yourself. One day the people who left you behind may see what you've built without them. They may recognize the gap where they could have stood. But by then, you'll already be walking forward. Not alone. Never again. If you've ever come home to silence, I want you to know you're not forgotten. We're still here, still showing up. And if you need someone at that gate holding a sign with your name on it, we'll be there. Because silence doesn't get the last word. Presence does.